Hello and welcome to the My Hope Story podcast from Hope Community Church Ballanark. Stories of hope, all about Jesus.
Who are we, but sinners saved by grace?
Hello, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
I'm good. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Episode number 2. It's a good start. You have a lot of high standards to keep up to.
I know. I listened to the one last week and was laughing a lot.
Well, I hope the banter's better because last week's was terrible, I'm not going to lie. And I blame Pete for that.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
Of course. So, Dilly, tell us who you are, first of all, and what your role is within the church.
So I'm Dilly. My role within the church, I'm a member of Hope Ballanark. I became a member back in August last year.
Okay.
But I've been coming to the church for quite a while before that, probably just about a year and a half now. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've seen the podcast for last week then?
Yeah.
So you know what to expect. I'm expecting great things. I don't actually know a lot about your story, if I'm honest, so this is going to be nice for me as well as everyone else listening. So I suppose we'll just start off the same way we did with Pete last week. Tell us about your younger days, what young Dilly was like.
So I guess like really young Dilly, believe it or not, was really shy.
Okay.
Like I didn't really talk to people that I didn't know.
I don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah. This was when I was living back in Surrey. So I lived there with my mum, my dad and my younger brother until I was about 10.
Okay.
And then my dad decided that he was going to train for ministry.
Yep.
So we left Surrey and moved to Nottingham for 2 years while my dad was in theological college.
Cool.
And I was going into year 6 at school, which is like, I don't know what that is in Scottish years because it's like completely different.
Yeah, that's always confused me, and clearly England does it wrong, so...
Yeah, okay. And I kind of got there and I was like, right, well, I don't know anybody. Yeah. There's nobody that I can talk to that I know, so I'm going to have
really
to start.
As well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start talking to people that I don't know, and that my parents don't know, and that kind of really brought me out of my shell and got me used to speaking to new people.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you said you've got brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
What's the kind of ages between you?
So I have an older half brother who is 11 years older than me.
Okay.
And I used to kind of see him on weekends when I was really young, but he wasn't kind of part of the family that lived in our house, so I didn't really grow up with him. And then my younger brother is 2 years younger than me.
Okay. So you played the big sister role as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. My mum always says that like we got on really, really well.
Okay.
I don't know if I remember it that way. We used to fight and we used to annoy each other when we were younger, and
as all siblings do.
Yeah. One of my favourite things to do was to jump out on Phil. He's my younger brother, and like just jump out on him and make him scream. He's this really like high pitched girly scream, and I loved it. It was amazing. But he got me back. As well.
Sure he did.
But yeah, we're really close now.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned your dad was studying theology.
Yeah.
That's cool. I had no idea that was the case. So tell us a little bit about that then. What was it?
Yeah. So I guess it started in the church that I grew up in, and he was a lay reader there. And really, really involved in church life, and my mum was as well. Actually, like she used to run the Sunday school, and it was a massive part of life. And then through kind of multiple decisions with Dad's jobs and feeling called to kind of do more, he decided that he was going to go and study. And so he did his 2 years studying at Nottingham.
Yeah.
And we then moved down to Weymouth in Dorset, where he did almost kind of like a pastor in training, kind of 2 year with a church. And he stayed on in Weymouth after that and did he did ministry without a church.
Okay.
So it was working with a lot of churches in Weymouth, because there was lots and lots of different churches. Some of them were Church of England, some of them were free churches, and kind of bringing them all together and doing ministry on the streets.
Yeah.
And like really just kind of working with the town, rather than a church and a church building, and just working with people.
That's cool.
And putting things together for that.
So probably not what you would, when you think of a church and you think of maybe what a pastor or a preacher would be like, you kind of picture standing up on a stage like this and just preaching in front of everyone who's probably not listening and probably falling asleep, just like we do when Pete's preaching.
Yeah.
To what your dad was doing was probably a bit different.
Yeah, completely.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was.
So you were going to church, you said.
Yeah.
Your mum's running the Sunday school.
Yeah.
How's that for you?
It was really good. I really loved my childhood and growing up in that church and in that church family. I just remember being really happy when I was going to church down in Surrey. You know, I knew everybody at the church, so I could speak to all of them at that point, and that was fine. And then when we went to Nottingham, as part of Dad's course, it was going to see lots of different churches and experience different ways of preaching and different ways of leading, and I got to go along with him, and that was great. So I went to, again, like loads of different churches. I remember a couple that were kind of stand out for places that I really liked, but mostly that was because they either had kind of early teenagers there that were the same age as me, or they had donuts. That was the Vineyard Church. So Vineyard, you got donuts. Yeah, you got donuts before the service. So I would like to go into that one.
Definitely missing a 2 year, man. If we need more people in, then maybe Pete should get his old donuts. I'll be well
way
for that.
Forward.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Sunday school then, because again, when I picture Sunday school, it's probably some old person just talking at young kids.
Yeah.
And I know that's not how we kind of try and do it here at Hope, but that's what I picture. So what was Sunday school like for you then?
I guess there was kind of lots of different layers to it depending on where I was.
Yeah.
Sunday school when I was really young was, oh, hi mum. And we usually did like an arts and craft, and we'd learn something about Jesus, and we'd do all the kind of children's story tales, so like Noah and the Ark and Jonah and the Whale, and it was all very sweet and
fluffy.
But it was good. I had really good memories from that, and then kind of moving forward from that, it became less about Sunday school and more about like teenage home groups and meeting with friends that were the same age as me, and having adults that like weren't too much older than us, that were like the cool adults, and having them kind of go through a few verses or doing some teaching, and we'd all sit on beanbags and stuff our faces, and that was really good. And then while I was in Weymouth, I kind of took part in a thing called Kids Zone. So I was kind of at that age where I wasn't like old enough to run it, but I could be one of like the leaders.
One of the cool kids?
Yeah, I was one of the cool kids. And that was just absolute mayhem, because they almost ran it like a game show.
Okay.
So they had games, and they had like people chucking like cream pies and ketchup all over each other. And then there was like the bit of Bible study and the bit of teaching about Jesus in that. But it was a lot of theatre and fun.
Yeah.
With kind of Jesus loves you. Okay, great. It combined in it.
Okay, cool. So you've been moving about a fair bit.
Yeah.
You have come out your shell, which is great. Where are you at with being a Christian? Do you understand what the gospel means when you're younger?
Yeah. I think I definitely understood what it meant. I knew that I had done things wrong. I knew that I wasn't perfect, and I knew that Jesus had died for me and he'd taken that. At that point, I don't think that I was aware of actually how much of like a sinner I was and how a big a deal sin was.
Yeah.
You know, I was naughty and I was bad, and then people forgot about it, and that was fine. You moved on. And then really what an impact following Jesus is meant to have on your life. You know, I was quite happy to go and have my friendship groups that were part of the church, and my friendship groups at school, and that was it. There was nothing really different.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think anyone that looked at me and looked at some of my non-Christian friends when I was that age would have noticed any difference.
Okay. So, and we spoke about this last week as well with Pete. It's kind of almost like living a double life.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, how did you get on at high school then, knowing that you were a Christian? Were you teased at all? Was it difficult for you?
I went to a Christian high school.
Okay.
And I still had friends there. Like, I still had friends in the group that were Christians as well. So it wasn't really too hard for me. I don't think. Everyone just kind of accepted that I was a Christian, and that was that. And I think at that age there wasn't really, again, I said, like, there wasn't much difference. You know,
Yeah.
I was classed as like one of the good kids and maybe like a little bit of a nerdy kid rather than a Christian kid. I think the difference came when I went to college. So I would have been 16 through 18 at that time, and that was really when you know, being a Christian was different. So
that's when all the good stuff happens.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure we'll come on to. Okay. So before we move on to that, what's the family life like then? Is it centred around, I appreciate that through your dad's work, out with work, is it centred around being a Christian and loving Jesus, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was really, really blessed growing up to have parents that both believed in Jesus and both had a really active faith. And I learned a lot of the Bible through not reading it myself, but being told about it and talking about it. And I think both my mum and dad were really good role models in kind of modelling just trusting in God. You know, packing up the whole family and moving and being like, we don't know what's going to happen, but, you know, we trust God. And there were so many times growing up where I remember my mum and dad having conversations with me going, look, we think this is right and we think this is what we're going to do, but we're just going to trust God that if it's not, then it won't happen, and that's okay. And we're just going to see where he leads us.
And that's mental, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're so blessed to grow up in that environment, because even today I really struggle with putting that trust in God, even though you know he's in control. But to grow up in that is amazing.
Yeah.
And for people outside having a faith, that must be mental to look at.
Yeah.
Absolutely mental. But
Yeah,
no, that's amazing. That's amazing.
it's really good.
What about your younger brother? Is he kind of in the same boat as you? Is he?
So Phil took part in everything, but didn't quite have the same friendship group
Okay.
that I had. So he struggled a lot more with it. And I don't know whether it was because there was more people my age that were
Yeah.
going to church, or because a lot of the people, and I say people, like the younger adults that were there were girls. So as a younger guy, I think he really struggled. I don't think any of his like close friends were Christians.
Okay.
And my mum and dad always gave us the option as to whether to go to church or not when we were old enough
Yeah.
to be left alone. And he stopped going pretty much as soon as he
As soon
had
as
that
you're allowed to.
option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that? That must have been quite difficult.
Again, at that point, I don't think that I had really kind of clocked how much being a Christian is like part of your life.
Yeah.
You know, I was Christian at the groups and I was Christian at the church, and then my other life was just normal. So I saw Phil having this kind of life outside of church, and that was just okay, he's been a kid.
Yeah. And what age are you at this point?
So we moved to Weymouth when I was 12, so between the years of like 12 and 18.
Okay.
So he would have been 10 to 16.
Okay. Yeah, probably the age that you would start falling away from if you had a choice.
Yeah.
It's just difficult, and it can be sad, but I'm sure you can tell us more about that later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the good stuff then. So you went to college. What are you studying at?
So at college, I studied law, psychology, sociology, and performing arts.
Okay, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like you should be sitting here then and studying me, but fair play. So what was the plan then?
So I really, really wanted to join the police force.
Okay.
That was kind of the end goal. And at that stage, I knew that I wanted a degree before I joined. So I'd started looking at law degrees. And yeah, I just kind of picked the college courses that would work best for getting into university and getting the law degree, but also that wasn't just like English or history. I was like,
stuff.
I've done that for 8 years now, I'm all right, not doing it anymore. So
Okay.
yeah.
So you're at college then?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about college life. What are you, 16, 17 at this stage?
Yeah, so 16, 17, and I think that's kind of when the cracks started to show for me between having this kind of church life and outside life. And I still had some of my friends that were going to church at my college.
Okay.
But there was a lot more of my friends that weren't Christians at that point. And that's when I started getting like, oh, you're a Christian, you're not meant to be doing that stuff. And, oh, you're a Christian, you shouldn't say stuff. And I kind of felt that at that stage it was my personality and the way that I'm growing was clashing with this picture that people had of being a Christian and what I should and shouldn't be doing.
And you start to really wrestle with yourself, but even though you know that their perception of what a Christian should be and shouldn't be is actually probably wrong.
Yeah.
But you all of a sudden start to second guess yourself, and
Yeah, definitely.
it's pretty difficult. So when you're at college, are you saved at this point? Do you believe that you've been saved?
So I would have said yes at the time. I had gone through a confirmation course when I was 14, 15, which in Church of England is so that you can take the bread and wine.
Okay.
And you know, they kind of make sure you believe what you're meant to, and at that stage I would have said, yes, I'm a Christian, and yes, that's what I believe, but at the same time I wasn't living that like at all. I was like, okay, yes, I can say all this stuff and I can turn up to church and I know what to pray, and I know the Bible verses that I need.
You could be a Sunday Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely like tick box Christian. And just not at all while I was at college. And like you said, it became that wrestle with, okay, I know how I'm meant to be, but I don't want to be that.
So you're at college, you're maybe getting teased a little because you're not living to the expectations of what a Christian should be, or you're saying stuff or doing stuff that they don't think is what you should be doing. So you mentioned cracks start showing, so I'm assuming sin starts to really come in and grab hold of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the struggles? What are you coming up against?
So I think a lot of things that just happen when you're that age and you're a teenager, that as Christians we go, okay, that's sin, and society maybe looks at that and goes, teenagers. So for me it was starting to drink alcohol, you know, going out and drinking too much alcohol, and then relationships, particularly like sexual relationships.
Do we need to do a disclaimer here to your mum and dad before you?
No, they know. That was an interesting conversation. And then again, just like things that I was saying and things that I was doing. You know, I remember having conversations with people and being horrible about people, like being really snide and unnecessary, really. But at that stage, it's my opinion and that's how I feel.
Okay. So, did you start to fall away from the church at all during this period, or were you still having that Christian life?
Yeah, not while I was at college. I still went to church. I still went to the home groups because that was where my friends were. And the friends that I had at college who were part of that Christian group were living exactly the same as me. You know, they could live their church life and live their college life, and they were two completely different people.
But getting the best of both.
Yeah, and I guess I was exactly the same. And because I had those friends there, I was going for the friends and for the fun. You know, I like singing and I like dancing, and I could do that at church. And it was a social event rather than a learning and a growing faith experience.
And you mentioned there you could sing and dance. It just upsets me that we can't do that anymore.
I know.
And that came up last week, and see if it continues to come up. By the time we get to the 5th and 6th episode, I'll be sitting crying that we can't sing and touch anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so you're at college then. You're kind of living this double life, drinking, being involved in relationships, and sin is really starting to probably take a hold of you. How did you get on at college? Did you see that through the whole term you were there?
Yeah. Finished college, got a place at university, and then I moved to Middlesbrough.
You have moved a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not very good at geography, but you're telling me all these
up and
places,
down everywhere.
and I know them because I've heard of them, but I couldn't tell you any of them are. They could all be neighbouring, but they could also be all over the place. I just couldn't be bothered with that moving about.
I really, really wanted to move away from Weymouth, and not so much that it was moving away from my parents, but I think I'd found that my time in Nottingham, I loved being up north, and I loved the people up north, and I think actually moving from Nottingham to Weymouth was more of a change than the first move for me, because I'd gone from Nottingham, that is really kind of multicultural, loads of different people, really big city, to Weymouth, that was a tiny little town that had all the same kind of people living there, and everybody knew what everybody was doing, and that kind of really freaked me out at first. Like, that people would come up to me and be like, "Oh, I saw you out shopping the other day," and I'm like, what?
Well, that's why Pete loves Calvi, man. See, every time something goes on in Calvi, I just need to look into a group chat and Pete's already on it, trying to get answers.
It's amazing because, like, we'll see the sirens and hear the sirens and see the lights go past our house, and not even 2 minutes later, our phones will go off and we'll both be like, Pete.
I mean, I don't even live in Ballannock, and I know what goes on. I just need to look at that. It's kind of like eyes out a still game with Pete, although he doesn't always know the answers. But okay, so you're moving around, you're going to university. What are you studying at uni?
So I studied law at uni.
So you went for law.
Yeah.
Okay, and how's that? Because you've now moved away. You've kind of left your parents behind.
Yeah.
So you're going out in the big bad world on your own.
Yeah.
Pretty scary.
No, I loved it.
Back freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, I really loved it. It was, uni for me was that kind of in between of leaving my parents' house but still having that support. And it, just kind of a really gentle step into adulthood. Like, I learned how to pay bills and things like that.
And you realised everything was expensive.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we'd never actually leave our mum and dad's.
No. No, it's still home, isn't it? You still call it home. Like, my mum and dad don't live in a house that I've ever lived in now, but I'm still going home when I go to see them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've moved to uni. You living on your own? Are you shared accommodation?
I was in a shared house every year that I was there, but I lived with different people each year. Okay.
And the people that you lived with, are they Christians? No. So how was that?
Not at all.
Completely different dynamic then.
Yeah, I guess yes and no, because at that point, like, I'd gone to uni and I had a couple of weeks where I'd looked at churches, and hadn't found any that I'd liked. And I think that's probably nothing to do with the churches. It was more to do with me and being like, I'm at uni and I don't have to pretend to go to church anymore to spend time with people that I'm not friends with.
You started finding flaws in the church as an excuse not to go.
Yeah. Exactly. And I went to the student union, and went to the Christian union a couple of times, and again was like, I don't really get on with these people, and so that social element wasn't there. So I completely stopped going.
Okay.
I didn't go to church. I didn't have any Christian friends for the whole time I was at university.
So how's your personal walk with Jesus then? If you've not got the church element to it, how's your personal walk?
So I would have said at that point I was a Christian. Yeah. But it was very much like, you know when you get those sheets through that go, what religion are you? Oh yeah, I'm Christian. Take the box. That's it. That's my Christian life on that sheet of paper, and I wasn't behaving like a Christian. I would pray when something was going wrong.
We all do that.
And at no other point when I was like, okay, Jesus, help me get through this exam, or Jesus, I really need this job.
And all joking aside, though, that's the grace that we get from God, that we can totally neglect the whole time and still call out for help when we need it. And ultimately that brings us back to Jesus, which you clearly now are, which I'm sure we'll come on to later on. But we'll stick with the good stuff at the moment. So you don't really have a Christian life anymore, other than ticking a box to say that you're a Christian. You're only praying when you need help. To get you through exams. What kind of sin are you struggling with? I can imagine what it is, given that it's uni life.
Yeah. everything and kind of everything that I've covered before, you know, like relationships, alcohol, I think particularly as kind of like a growing young woman, the relationship that I had with my body as well, and not that I was like going out and being ridiculous with it, but I definitely wouldn't wear the clothes that I wore at uni now.
Okay.
as a delicate way of pushing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, just I think I took my studies for granted. I was just like, everything that was good or that I saw as good in my life, that was me. I'd done that, and that was my hard work. And you know,
even though you're praying and asking for help.
Yeah, but so I'd asked Jesus for help before the exam, but when I passed the exam, I'm so clever. I'm amazing. And I had this conversation with Faith actually a couple of months ago, that nothing bad happened like during that time. Like I know a lot of people have that kind of come into the realization that their life isn't working because they have a trauma or something bad happens, or they hit that point where they're like, I can't live like this anymore. That didn't happen for me. Like I still.
So you're probably just living the kind of cliche uni life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking nothing really bad's going on. I'm just going out drinking and doing what everyone else at uni does.
Yeah.
And that's it. And to an extent, it probably isn't that bad. As the world would see it. You kind of touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, so are you aware that it's sin? Are you aware that Jesus isn't really in your thoughts at any time through this?
I think there had been a couple of times when particularly my dad had asked where I was at.
Yeah.
And looking back on it now, I can see how worried they must have been.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't hiding any of this from them. You know, I'd chat with my mum, I'd send them photos from our nights out, and I'd bring boyfriends home to meet them.
Yeah.
And my dad is one of these people that he doesn't say a lot. He sits and listens a lot. But when he says something, it's always like, oh, okay.
It's the old, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
Yes, exactly. I got that line so much. But yeah, and they had really openly said that they would support me whatever happened in my life, and that they would always be my parents. But they were worried. You know, they'd asked where I was at with church and where I was at with God, and I brushed them off completely. It's just like, oh, it's fine. You know, nothing bad's happening, so it's okay.
Okay, so they're probably praying like mad for you at this point. Like, I could just imagine. And you're just kind of brushing it off as if nothing's actually going on. Yeah,
I don't need that. Like, you know, it set me up really well. It gave me a really good foundation for my life, and obviously I feel like I'm doing really well at the moment, and so I don't really need it anymore. Okay,
so we're going to jump to now.
Okay.
Just very quickly. We will come back to your journey to get to here, but if you could speak to yourself now, speak to that person who was at uni, do you think you would have said anything different to try and get yourself down a different path, or?
Yeah. I don't know what. Like, I don't know what I would have said.
You'd probably just be praying like mad, like your mum and dad did.
Yes. Yeah, like, I don't know what I would have listened to at that point. Yeah. I don't know that's a really rubbish answer, right? But I don't know what I would have said that would have actually kind of clicked. Like, there's so much that like that I would say from my position, like you're going to keep looking and looking and looking, and you're never going to find it where you're looking.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel lost, and you want people to love you, but that's not the love that you need. And that feeling of guilt when something bad happens, you can't keep brushing that off.
Yeah.
And it's something so much more serious. And I probably would not have listened to any of it.
Yeah. Amen. No, like that's a sermon right there. All right, cool. So where's Rash at during this? Do you know him at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I met Rash in my
Rash being your husband.
Yeah,
of course.
Rash is my husband. I met him in my first year of university.
Okay. And when did you get together? Did you just friends at the beginning type thing?
So yeah, we started off being friends, and very quickly started spending a lot of time together. We met through mutual friends, through sports teams.
Yeah, because Rash played rugby.
He played American football.
Was it American football at uni?
Yeah.
I thought he played rugby. Sorry, Rash.
I can see Pete gesturing in the background. At this point, Pete would like me to say that I was a cheerleader, and that's how I met Rash, because he was on the American football team.
Okay. So, are you going to give us a snippet of your cheerleading skills?
Oh, we're not allowed to sing and dance in church anymore.
You can dance.
I don't think anybody needs to see that right now.
Pete's got some pom-poms there. If you want to.
I can imagine.
Okay, so you're a cheerleader.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
So that's funny, because you're going to get a slagging now.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so so you meet Rash
Yeah.
while he's playing American football, and you're singing and dancing for him.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take this opportunity to say that I was the type of cheerleader that like throws people in the air, not the kind with the pom-poms.
Okay, so you're the big buff one that just throws
Yes.
people out.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just gonna take a complete side note. Where's with the name Dilly?
Okay, so Dilly wasn't the name that I was given when I was born.
Yeah, I kind of gathered that.
I was born Alexandra.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if Ali knows that either.
She will now.
Well, yeah. Ali, better be listening. Yeah, I was born Alexandra, but my granddad started calling me Dilly when I was like teeny tiny little, and he used to sing a little song to me when he was calling me Dilly, and it just kind of stuck.
Okay.
And at that age, I couldn't say Alexandra, but I could say Dilly.
I actually think you might have told me this story before, and I now feel bad that I've asked you. But now everyone
It's all
knows.
right. No one else knows it. So yeah.
I'm sure we must have been having a fire or something,
Yeah,
and you
probably.
told us that. Although I don't remember you saying your name was Alexandra. Okay, so your granddad called you, and you
Yeah.
couldn't say your actual name, so you just stuck with Dilly.
Stuck with Dilly. Yeah, that must have been from when I started talking. So I had it legally changed when I was 18.
Wow.
Because it started causing issues. Because like I was joining new jobs and not getting paid because payroll didn't know who Alexandra was. And like, all of my certificates from school said Alexandra, but then weren't being taken because they were like, well, that's not you.
Because you're telling everyone your name's Dilly.
Because my name's Dilly.
Fair play.
And even I remember like being at an event, and this is really bad that I can't remember what event it was, but it was with my dad's step family, and we really we weren't very close with them when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And I remember standing talking to someone, and then everyone shouting, being like, Alex, come for a photo. Alex, 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 we need you for a photo.
You have
And
definitely told me this story
like-
before.
I'm standing there going, who is this guy Alex? Why is he being so rude? Like, just go for the photo. And then someone comes up and taps me on the shoulder and is like, Alexandra, we need you. And I'm like, me? Like,
yeah, stick with Dilly.
Yeah, Dilly's so much better.
Okay, cool. So back to you being a cheerleader then.
Yeah.
I really don't know what else to say about that. Back to you being a cheerleader. That was really funny. Okay, so you've met Rash. You're now spending more time with him. Now Rash is not a Christian.
No.
How was that? That must have been, well, to be fair, you're not really a Christian at this point either.
No, not really. So it was very much like any other relationship from kind of anybody else in the world at that age. Not being Christian.
Would you have introduced yourself as being a Christian?
No.
No? So it wouldn't even come up in conversation?
No, not really. I think the first time that it came up in conversation with Rash was probably when he came to meet my mum and dad. Okay. And saying, you know, like, my dad is a vicar and that's what he believes. And I think Rash even asked me at that stage, he was like, well, do you believe it? And I'm like, yeah, I believe in Jesus.
And that's it?
And that was it, yeah.
Okay. So how many years you at uni for?
3.
Anything exciting during that time, or just very much the same throughout?
Yeah, same throughout really. It was almost like living through a pandemic. Every day was kind of the same, but it was a lot more fun than living through a pandemic.
Yeah. At least you could go to the pub.
Yeah. And that was basically what my life consisted of, like lessons, exams. I went and did Camp America during uni. That was fun. And yeah, it was a lot of parties and
okay, I may be jumping a bit too far forward here, so pull me back if you want to.
No, go for it.
But how did you end up in Scotland?
So Rash had finished uni a couple of years ahead of me, and during my time at university, my mum and dad had moved from Weymouth down to Cornwall. Okay. Again, they had just been amazing and been like, God's leading us somewhere else now, and gone. So I come to the end of finishing uni, and I knew that I didn't want to stay in Middlesbrough. Like, I'd really enjoyed my time there, but there wasn't really much in the way of work for me. Yeah. And none of my friends were staying. So
are you still thinking about joining the police at this time?
Yeah, okay. Still wanted to do that. Rash had got a job up in Glasgow working with one of his friends. And so my options, as I saw it, was go back and live with my mum and dad in Cornwall, in a teeny tiny little village that was like an hour away from the nearest town where there was work prospects. Okay. Or move in with Rash.
And the best wee city in the world.
Yeah. At that stage, I hadn't ever been to Glasgow. And when I told people I was thinking of moving to Glasgow, everyone was like, oh.
Because it's clearly got a reputation.
Yeah, massively. And they were like, isn't it really dangerous? Like, you're going to get attacked in the street.
Have you ever been attacked in the street in Glasgow?
No, actually, funnily
all those haters out there.
I know. Even when I wear my England shirt.
I would probably attack you if you were wearing my shirt.
But yeah, so those are kind of my options, and the police force in Scotland was recruiting at that point.
Okay.
And I came up and I visited Rash a couple of times, met some people, and was like, yeah, sure, I'll go to Glasgow.
Moving again?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've moved to Glasgow. Whereabouts in Glasgow?
So the first flat that Rash and I lived in was 2 blocks down from Celtic Park. We lived in a flat that was above the one-stop shop on London Road.
Okay, that must have been mental at the weekends.
it was horrific. Like we ended up putting in our calendar when the Celtic games were on, because we were like, okay, we either have to be out for the whole day or we have to be in for the whole day, because like trying to park or even just get into the flat when the games were on was just a nightmare.
Okay. So what age are you at this point?
21.
21. Fresh out of uni.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where are you at with Jesus during this time? Still nowhere?
Yeah. Still exactly the same. Just, yeah.
Did you even think about churches in Glasgow when you first came here? I know you said you looked at it when you went to uni at the beginning, but...
Not when I first moved to Glasgow. I think when I first moved here, the first 6 months that we were in the flat, it was a new city, so it was exciting and going and seeing different places. And my initial plan was to take a couple of months, settle down a bit, and then start applying for the police force. But what actually happened really quickly was I got a job at a restaurant.
Okay.
And that ended up being like really long hours and working a lot. So in my free time I was going out and exploring rather than going to church.
Okay. Being a tourist instead of going to church. What restaurant was it?
Chiquitos at Glasgow Fort.
I miss Chiquitos.
It was amazing.
It was
really good.
I feel like we should have a minute of silence for Chiquitos. We had one last week as well for Joan Becker. I need to get this in every single week now.
I mean, I'd go for the minute silence for the food, because the food was amazing.
It was.
Working there, not so much.
Okay, fair play.
Yeah.
So you're in Glasgow, you've been there a few months, you're working in Chiquitos, I'm assuming, patched the police at this point, you're not bothering about that?
It was still something that I'd wanted to go for. It was still kind of an end goal. At the same time, Rash's relationship with his friend that he was working for had started breaking down, and he wasn't really getting a lot of hours at work, so money was an issue. So at that point it was, I have a job and I'm going to work. And didn't really think much else of it. So
probably life and finances just kind of took over, as it does.
Yeah.
Okay, you're still not walking with Jesus at this point.
No.
So what happens next then? So you've been in Tollcross.
Yeah. We had started looking at houses, or like flats to buy.
Okay.
We had quite a significant plumbing issue with the flat that we were staying in, and we decided we needed out of there.
So you say significant? What happened?
The sewage pipe kept backing up into our bathroom.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it was happening when we first moved in. We were the only flat in that block, and they were old tenement flats, but they had been redone inside.
Okay. Yeah.
And the builders had obviously like just flushed cement or something down the pipes, and they were old pipes. And so when it was just us living there, it was fine because we weren't putting enough down there for it to back up. And then other people started moving into the building, and ours was like the lowest flat for the pipe to come through.
Everybody's. That is horrific.
And it
absolutely
started off happening every 2 weeks, and then it was every other day. And we were like, nope,
you can't live in that.
It was awful, really, really bad. So we were quite.
So you're probably getting buzzing because you get to move again. Like you clearly love moving. Yes, thank you. I get to move out.
The boxes. So we started looking at somewhere to buy though, because we were both really happy in Glasgow, and we were like, well, we don't really want to keep paying rent to someone else. So we had looked at loads of flats, like absolutely tons, and they were all nice, and we would have probably been quite happy living in any one of them.
Yeah.
But the only house that we saw was in Ballanach.
You end up in our wee scheme.
And I ended up in Ballanach.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know Ballanach at all?
No. When I told people I was moving...
You could tell you were going to get attacked walking down the street.
No.
Heard that.
I told everybody that I was moving to Ballanach. And everybody was like, where is that? And I was like, Ballanach. And they were like, it's Ballanach, love. So,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Okay. And that's where you live now? Is it still the same wee house?
Still the same house. I've been there now for 7 years, 6, 7 years.
And I know through conversation you're itching to get somewhere else, or you were certainly last year.
Yeah.
Just buzzing to move again.
Yeah. I'm bored now. Like, no. Yeah, just kind of looking at bigger houses. We're in a 2-bedroom at the minute, and looking at family, and it's always been really important for us to have space where our families can come and visit, because Rash's family is all in Norfolk, so they're not close by either.
Yeah.
And we love having people to stay, like friends and family. And,
no, it's not allowed at the moment, no.
I know.
Okay, so
yeah.
So you've moved to Ballanach,
yeah?
Yeah. When do you find Jesus again?
So, when I first moved to Ballanach, I had a look at a few churches.
What made you start looking at churches?
I think it was that, okay, I've bought a home now, and this is obviously where I'm going to be for a while. You know, it's not a temporary uni house that I was moving every year from. It's not a temporary flat. It's somewhere that I'm actually like going to put down roots. And at the time, I probably would have said that I was looking for a church, but I think really what I was looking for was friends.
Social aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what I saw church as.
Because there's only so much banter you can get for Rash.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love you, Rash.
Me too.
Yeah, so I think that was what I was looking for, and I tried a couple of different churches, and some of them, like I enjoyed the worship, but I didn't enjoy the pastor, and some of them was the other way around. And there was one church that I went to for a couple of weeks, but they were meeting in a school. And actually when I turned up, I think it must have been like the 4th week or something that I was going there, and there was like loads of people at this church, like it was one in the city centre,
Right.
and no one was there. And I was like,
up.
and no one had.
Are you still drinking at this
said
point though?
anything.
Because you may have imagined it all.
Not as much as I was. No, like I wasn't going out and partying the same. But yeah, like no one was there, and it turns out like they had moved premises and told everybody like in the church.
Just told their members and just kind of left it at that.
I was just like, oh, okay, cool.
Is that not what we done though when we moved here?
I don't know. Pete, did you let everybody know?
Everybody knows.
Okay. For anybody that doesn't know, Hope Ballanach is now meeting at Hope Hall in Baileystown. Yeah, I stopped looking.
Okay.
I was like, I've tried a couple. It's not really worked out. It's not for me. And I think part of it was looking for the social aspect, but I think the other part was coming to that realization that actually I'm not living as a Christian, and maybe if I went to a church that was going to challenge me, and where I did get teaching, I would have to change my life.
Yeah.
And
that leads me right in, because I was going to ask you next. You've not found a church, you've kind of looked, but where's your personal walk? But it sounds as if you weren't really willing to do that.
No, I wasn't. And I was like, obviously I'm living with Rash at this stage, and from everything that I had been taught, I knew that
Pretty dodgy.
was wrong.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I don't really want to change that.
Don't worry, I've had a similar experience. Pete won't say anything.
No, but yeah, I didn't want to change. Again, nothing bad had happened. I was quite happy, and I didn't want to be challenged. I didn't want to change anything.
Okay, so do you find our church or do you find Jesus first in this journey?
I think it is really, really kind of similar timeline. I had been bouncing around different jobs in the hospitality industry and staying at each place for a couple of years until I decided I didn't like it anymore and going to find something else. And I have friends here, and that's great. And my relationship with Rash is going really well, and that's great. But there was something missing. Yeah. And from an outsider looking in, who isn't a Christian, you know, I should have been happy. Yeah. And I'm not saying that I wasn't, but, you know, I had a job, I had a house, I had great friends, I had a great family, and but to me it felt like that can't be it.
Okay. And have you discussed this with Ash? Does he know that you're kind of looking around and on?
No, okay. Not at all. And
because I'm assuming you never actually speak about Jesus or being a Christian.
Not to Rash, no. I mean, there's sometimes things that come up. You know, like if something happened on the news and the church was involved.
Usually for the wrong reason.
Yeah. It would be, oh, what do you think about that? But that would always be my opinion rather than how do you feel about that as a Christian. And there had been a couple of instances where friends had made me feel like really uncomfortable about things, and that was probably like warning signs that I wasn't where I should have been. Okay. So someone had asked me if I was a Christian, why didn't I go to church? And I was just like, nah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even that in itself can be challenging. Like, I mean, that's a very simple question that you should be able to answer. Yeah. But you know yourself, you're not living the life that you should. And you're not walking the walk you should be walking.
Absolutely. And still at the time saying, yeah, I'm a Christian, ticking the box, and not following through with it at all. Okay. So yeah, I knew something was missing, and I started praying more, and bouncing around job to job. I had tried a couple of times to go to the police force, and I'd got through a couple of stages of interview, but for whatever reason it hadn't worked out. Yeah. And I was walking the dog and walked past a banner at the Calvary Centre for Hope Balanek.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you literally lived round the corner?
Round the corner. So decided I was going to go. Okay. And
was that a Sunday? Because usually the banner was really only out on a Sunday.
I think it must have been a Sunday. So I didn't go there and then I went the next time it was on. Okay. So it must have been like a week later. And yeah, I think at that stage I was definitely looking for something more. Like I knew that I wasn't in the right place, and didn't know how to get out of it. Yeah. You know, I still liked living with Rash, and we were engaged, you know, we were going to be married, and I liked my job, and all of that kind of aspect of life that I was still really kind of not wanting to change, but knew it wasn't right.
Yeah. Do you think you still have the wanting the social aspect? Is that still playing a part in this, do you think? Or is that kind of over and done with now that you've been living here a few years and you already have that social aspect?
I don't think that's why I was looking at coming to church.
It was more because you knew that something was missing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you remember your first Sunday coming into the Calvary Centre?
Yeah.
How did you feel on the lead up to that?
On the Sunday morning, I was actually really nervous.
Yeah.
Having been to lots of different churches, I'd obviously seen like what was expected at lots of different churches, and the part of the banner, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was like "Come as you are" or "Everybody welcome," something like that. And I was like, okay, I can probably turn up here in jeans. Like, well,
you walk in and we've all got hoodies and all that on, and
and people are wearing shorts. Yeah. So I'm like,
usually
okay.
we're pastels, to be fair. Sometimes preaching with hats on as well. Like.
Yeah. So yeah, I was nervous. I guess like anytime you walk into a room with people that you don't know, there's always going to be a little bit of nerves. But everyone was amazing. Yeah,
that's good.
Absolutely amazing. And
what stands out to you, those first kind of few minutes of walking in? Can you remember anything?
Yeah, just everyone was just chatting.
Did Mo come over and chat to you? I bet she did.
Probably.
Yeah, she would have.
So I remember Mo, but not from the beginning of before the service. I think I ended up sitting next to Mo.
Right.
And at this point, I didn't know that Mo was Mo. She was just like another person there. And during the service, I burst into tears. Really? I was in absolute tears because I was like, this is what has been missing. And I just felt like, almost like someone had stood me underneath a waterfall and it was just peace hitting me, just completely overwhelming. And I just burst into tears. Wow. And obviously sitting next to Mo, crying, it was immediate hug. And she just stood there with her arm around me for probably like a good 20 minutes in that service.
That's amazing. Yeah. Mo is the best.
Yeah, love it.
That's actually the tactics. Anyone that new comes in, Mo just sorts them right out.
Well, it works.
Absolutely, because if you then give up on the church and you've met Mo, you are a terrible person. Like, who was preaching that day? Can you remember?
It was Joe.
Joe? Oh,
yeah.
Real Joe.
So I think it must have been during Pete's holidays because neither of them were there.
Wow. You're skiving, Pete.
Okay,
yeah, so quite emotional then. First time there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, did you hang about for lunch and?
I didn't actually, not the first day. I can't even remember why. I don't know if I'd put lunch on or was going back home to have lunch with Rash or whatever, but I didn't stick around because I was well aware that I had tried to make my best impression by putting makeup on and then I had balled it all off. So I was like, okay, bye.
If it makes you feel any better, I don't remember that. I'm assuming I was there, but I don't remember that.
No idea. No.
Okay, so you've been to our mental church.
Yeah.
You've cried.
Yeah.
Made a fool of yourself.
Yeah.
However, got a lot of emotions out and probably starting to build that bridge with Jesus and really finding him again.
Yeah.
And that's what you needed, which is awesome. So what happens next then?
Just loads of things happening at once.
Are you in that honeymoon period of being a Christian again? Because I remember that feeling. And it's
I think so. And it was definitely this is what I've been missing for my life. Wow, what have I been doing with my life? You know, how have I got this far down this path? And what do I even do about it now? And I think that feeling was really overwhelming, because I was like, okay, things need to change.
Yeah.
Where do I start? What does that look like? And all of those worries about not wanting to change my life came like rushing back, and going, I don't even know what to do. And then at the same time, Becca had invited me and Rash around for dinner.
Wow.
And I think it was even that week. I think it might have been the Thursday. Or maybe the second time I came to church, it was the Thursday after. Anyway, she'd invited us round. And so I was like...
Again, that's tactical, getting all the nice people out there.
Yeah. And so I was kind of excited about that, really nervous, and then just praying a lot.
Good.
And really just being like, okay, this is it. This is the point. My life is yours.
That's amazing.
Go.
And that's the beauty of the gospel.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of grace.
Yeah.
You've lived those lives, or those years, completely separate from your Saviour, and then it just exposes all this sin that's been going on, and it just knocks you down, man, and you just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's an emotional roller coaster.
It really is. And then I guess there's always kind of that question of, can I even come back?
I think we all ask that question.
And I think the Bible studies, like the women's Bible study in particular, really helped with that. Because it was a time when you could actually talk about things and things that you were struggling with, and have that support from everybody else going, yep, I'm in the exact same situation.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, so you've still got this lingering relationship with Ash.
Yeah.
So, without going in too deep, how's that? What's the battle going on there? Because you clearly want to be with him, you're married and the guy.
Yeah. And that was actually really easy. I think that was the part that I was most worried about, with that whole life change and being challenged on that. And I was challenged. I was like, okay, I've been living in sin.
Yeah.
And it has obviously affected me and my heart more than I ever imagined. And now I want to make this massive change in my life, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because God is going to make it happen.
Yep.
And Rash is still there.
Is Rash supportive during this?
Massively.
Yeah, that's good.
Massively. And
that's very helpful.
Again, I think that's really down to the people at Hope. At this point, he had come with me to a couple of my dad's church services,
Okay.
Which were in a very traditional Church of England church in Cornwall.
Yeah.
He has some family friends who, again, go to a really, really traditional church. And we had started talking with church ministers for our marriage.
Okay.
That were all at really traditional churches, where the congregation is all 60 plus and
Your typical church,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, and that's just not for him at all. But Rash has always been really supportive of everything that I've done, even if he hasn't quite understood why. So even like certain jobs that I've gone for, he'd be like, if it makes you happy, do it. And at first I think that was what church was to him. It was,
Yeah.
if it makes you happy, go for it. I'm not going to stop you. But it was really when he started meeting people from church and actually coming to a couple of the services.
And I remember Rash coming and I sat and had lunch with him, and I thought we had it off quite well. I then asked him about 6 months later and he says he didn't remember it, so...
Rash won't remember anybody's names. Like, Rash cannot remember what he did yesterday.
Yeah. I'll forgive him for it. We started talking about golf, so that kind of, we found that level ground. But yeah, it was pretty cool to see him around, so that was good.
Yeah, and I think having people that were not only of a similar age to him, but in a similar kind of life situation, like had partners and had jobs, as well as being a Christian. You know, it wasn't a complete different lifestyle, because I think all of the Christians that he'd met were either really, really old, and Christian to them was go to church on Sunday because that's what you've been brought up to do. Yeah. Or it was my mum and dad that had, you know, given their whole lives. And I can't even imagine what that must have felt like to him, that I had then said, like, this is what I really, really believe now, and this is what I want to do with my life.
I bet he was worried in case you were like, right, God wants us to go somewhere else, we're shipping off.
How do you like India? Because I hear it's really nice this time of year. No, so yeah, like I can't even imagine what was going through his head. But the whole time he was really, really supportive, and I think he saw the change in me.
Good.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, for Christians that have partners that are non-Christians, we are a walking, talking gospel. For those that are not going to read themselves, then ultimately they would see that in our lives, and it's important that he did see that change, and that's amazing. And it's such a blessing that he was there to support you and didn't make things difficult for you. So well and Rash. Yeah. Good lad. Okay, so you're going to have lunch with the Bridgman, or dinner, with the Bridgman. You are crying out to the Lord. Do you believe that was a point that you were saved?
Yeah. And it's strange because it was that peace feeling, and I guess it must have been quite different from people that are coming to Jesus for the first time, having that feeling, because like I'd felt that peace before and I'd understood what it had meant before. I just hadn't done anything about it.
And it's a massive weight off your shoulders when you do it, right? Even though life is about to get so much more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what else to say, like, other than that piece, and it was just right, and just felt protected, and just like when people like talk about feeling the Holy Spirit, like that's what that was. I have absolutely no doubt about it. So I think, I don't know if saved is the right word, because I think like I understood it before, and I had the belief that I had before was based in truth. I just wasn't living that truth.
Okay, so you've made that connection with Jesus again. He's protecting you. You've found a church that you're willing to stay around, which is great. You're due to marry Rash. Do you marry him soon after, or what's the kind of timelines there?
I think it must have been about a year
Okay,
after I started coming to church that we got married.
good. Okay. So
Oh
what-
no, actually, I'm getting that completely
I
wrong.
thought it was like
It was probably like 3 months. Yeah, because it was
July.
nearly a year after we got married that I got baptised here.
Okay,
That's
so
why I'm
that's
getting confused.
that's 2 weeks in a trot.
Baptism,
where-
marriage.
So Pete wasn't sure about his marriage to Cara last week, and now
I
you're the
know,
same way.
and I laughed at him
Ah.
so much for that as well. Sorry, Pete.
And Glass, sorry.
Oh yeah, that one too.
Okay, hopefully whoever comes on next week's a lot better with
You
with
can
the
edit
dates
this,
and
right?
stuff. Okay, so you're married.
Yeah.
You're around church.
Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned baptism there. So
Yeah.
is that kind of on the agenda for you?
Yeah, so baptism really came up as a chat with Pete about membership. And whilst I'd been at a lot of different churches, being there as a child, that discussion of membership had never come up.
Yeah.
And after speaking with my dad, I had visited some churches that had membership, but I'd never been part of one. So that was a whole new concept to me.
Well, that's because we're a cult.
Well, yeah, you know,
Right.
and I wanted a hoodie.
That's why we all do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I need to wear blue again, because it's part of the rules that you're not actually allowed to wear any other colour other than. Yeah, so it's quite awkward.
Am I going to get chucked out now then?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so back to baptism.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And yeah, Pete had chatted with me about it, and I guess that was kind of like the first hurdle for me.
So did you instigate this conversation, or is it Pete?
Was the weekend away?
Yeah, I think I'd asked Pete about it at the weekend away, and then just kind of left it a couple of months, and then Pete had messaged me like, "Oh, do you still want to do that?" And yeah, so first off, the whole membership thing to me was completely different, and that took me getting my head around it a little bit.
Yeah.
To understand kind of why, and why it's necessary. And then the next bit was baptism. And I was christened as a baby.
Okay.
I'd then done my confirmation, which was my, I believe in Jesus. I understand what he did for me. And when Pete had said, like, actually you need to get baptised to become a member, but also
Really sounds forceful. You need to get baptised.
Yeah, like to become a member, but these are all the reasons why, and why
Yeah.
we ask that in what it says in the Bible. And my first reaction to that was, well, I've been baptized, I was christened, like I
Yeah.
don't need it. So yeah, that was the first kind of hurdle for me. That was a little bit of a wrestle, like, okay, what are my mum and dad going to think about this?
Okay.
Because, you know, they'd christen me as a baby, and
Yeah.
if I get baptised again, am I just going, no, what you did didn't count?
Yeah. Yeah. That was a rehearsal.
Yeah, like, you know, that was just water. It didn't mean anything. And then, do I feel I need it? Like, am I just doing it to be a member of the church?
Yeah.
And
And
if
those are all
I,
good
like-
questions to ask.
Yeah, if I am, that's the wrong reason to be doing
100%,
it.
yeah.
Like, so that was something that I was really, really praying about for a long time. And going back and forward in my mind, going through everything, going, oh, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about this? And it got to the stage where I was like, I'm doing this. Like, I'm doing this to myself. This is me saying all these things in my head. And really, I had said I'm going to give my life to Jesus and that he is in control and that his will be done. So that was when I started changing how I prayed about it.
Okay.
Because at first I was like, okay, tell me what to do. What should I do? Like, I don't know if this is right for me, and like all of those questions. And then that changed to, God, do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
Like, and yes. Like, it's absolutely yes. And so I messaged Pete that day, like after I prayed that.
God said yes, Pete.
God said yes, I'm all right, we're on board. And again, it was that feeling of peace, like, yeah, I've made the right decision. Jesus is in control of this. And then going through everything with Pete before my baptism as to why people get baptized as an adult, what the baptism symbolizes and why it's important. I
found that course really interesting.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's really good, and so much stuff that I had either heard before and just forgotten, heard before but not really in the context of like an adult baptism. So I'd obviously like heard about John the Baptist and Jesus getting baptized, but just from baptism's what you do.
Yep.
Like, there's water involved and that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard it kind of taught as to why you get baptized and how people are believers before you get baptized.
100%, and that's exactly what I was going to say. My understanding of it was you got baptized to be saved. Yeah. It's kind of the way I looked at it and the way I understood it. And really it's not. It's you showing that you're already walking with Christ is ultimately the reason for it. And and you went through that journey.
Yeah.
When was that? Was that not during lockdown?
Yep.
Yep. So we're into the pandemic.
Legally during lockdown. Yeah.
But of course you were doing it social distancing. And
So we did the course online.
Good old Zoom.
All over Zoom. Yeah.
Okay. So you said you enjoyed that course. You went through that. You've decided through prayer that that's the way forward and that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
So you were baptised, was it August?
Yeah.
I wasn't here. I watched on Facebook or YouTube, one of the two, when it was getting live streamed. Ali and I were driving part of the North Coast 500 and had it on in a laptop. How was that day for you?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Yeah. Like Rash came and that was amazing, incredible, like all of that. Like, it was just really, really important to me that he was there, but also really good that he wanted to be there as well.
That's amazing.
He
That's
was
really
like
good.
and he probably doesn't understand everything that it means to me at this point in time, but he knew that it meant a lot, and he was like, no, I'm going to be there. As well as one of our friends, Eric, who is also a Christian, and I think that was just really important.
Is that a South African guy?
Yeah, he's a South African guy. Yeah,
I didn't realise he was a Christian.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So that was really great that he was there as well. And my mum and dad watched
that's
from
nice.
Cornwall. So
And they supported you because you were worried about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd made the decision that I was going to get baptised, and it had been something that I was talking to mum and dad about. Like, I'm still really close with them, and we talk every week, and I said, like, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
And at that point, neither of them had really given a reaction, which they were absolutely doing it so that I made the right choice for me and that I wasn't swayed by them either way. And that is how they have dealt with every decision that I've made. Like, they will support me. But that kind of made me worry more because I was like, okay, they're not saying this is a good idea. They're not saying this is a bad idea.
I'm just disappointed. I'm not angry.
Yeah. It's like, no. So I told them, and they were over the moon. They were so really happy. And
because they've probably been still praying for you, like all those years.
Yeah.
And you found your saviour again.
Yeah.
They must have. I could imagine how they felt. That must have been incredible for them.
Yeah. I remember ringing my mum after I'd been to church that first Sunday and just being like, I found a church. And she was like screaming down the phone and just being like, yeah. And she absolutely can't wait to come and visit. She's like, I want to come and meet everybody and I want to see your church and I want to see everything like this.
That's amazing.
So yeah, straight after lockdown, they'll be up here.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so you've been baptised.
Yep.
Phenomenal day. Fantastic. Got wet.
Yep.
Probably cold.
In a mask as well.
Oh yeah.
Like,
right enough.
That was yeah.
And Pete doing it. Like, that's a worry. Okay, so you went through all that.
Yeah. Still alive. Real good.
Yep. So a few months have passed now.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at with your walk with the Lord?
It.
Because all the excitement is probably calmed down.
Well, yes and no, really. I think when I said that, like, I was going to give my life to Jesus and that was just how it was going to be, I knew that things were going to change. I didn't expect things to change so quickly, and I didn't expect things to change so massively. So at the time I was working for a recruitment company in the city centre, and I liked my job. You know, it was a good job. I liked who I worked with. I was quite happy. I had given up with the police. I tried again one last time and I got further through the interview stage than I'd ever got before. But again, I was told no, and I was like, okay, that's it. It's not meant to be, and that's fine. And then when I started coming to church again and when I gave my life to God, I was like, should I be trying again? Like, is that why I wasn't getting as far as I was? Because I wasn't in the right place in my life to be able to do that.
Makes sense.
And I really believe that, like, if I had gone into the police force at that stage, that I would not have managed. And so I'd kind of come to a peace with it, but then started questioning it again and was like, is that what I'm meant to be doing? Like,
and God knows our capabilities, and He knows where we're pushed to our limit. And maybe it wasn't the right time or the right thing for you to do.
And obviously lockdown. But lockdown for me, like, personally, has been such a blessing, and that is not to take away from the heartache that people have had when they've lost loved ones, and I realise how serious it is, but for me it was a time that I just got to slow down and spend time with God, spend time reading the Bible, and actually realising how much of the Bible I don't know. Like, you know, I know all of the stories that I learnt at Sunday school, and I know the snippet verses that were taught a lot at, like, Church of England, but reading full books of the Bible was something that I'd never done before coming to this church.
I feel you. You always seem to know the kind of go-to stories, the famous stories that everyone knows.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really gives you a right kick when you actually start to realise how much you don't know.
Yeah. Definitely a kick in the right direction as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't there's so much that I don't know, I can't do this, run away. It was, there's so much I don't know and there's so much I need to know.
Absolutely.
And wanting to kind of continue with that. And so that was amazing. And I also got to spend time with Rash too. Like when lockdown started, we'd been married 6 months, and for the first kind of 2 years of our relationship, we were living in different cities.
Yeah.
Since we started living together, we had both been working shift work, and really the only time that we had with just us was holidays. And to be honest, most of our holiday time was spent visiting family.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd only had like 1 or 2 holidays, but lockdown was, okay, no, you're in the house and you're together. And that was really, really good time for our marriage. I think it's obviously come quite soon in our marriage, but it has been brilliant. And then the fact that the church and most of the people in the church are part of the same community that I live in.
Yeah.
You know, they've been the people that I've been seeing. I haven't been seeing anyone from work. I haven't been seeing any of my other friends and family. I have been seeing and spending time with people from church, and just being really encouraged by them and supported by them. And there's no real other way to describe it other than like church family. Like it really is. It really is.
Okay. So I think we will start to wrap this up.
Cool.
Can you ask her about a new job?
Oh yeah, so that's the other massive change.
Okay. Well, Pete did want us to wrap it up there. But
You will
yeah.
have to watch this one in 3 parts, I think.
Sorry.
Cool. I've got all night. Tell us about your job.
I haven't. I've got work tomorrow. I had been toying with the idea of trying for the police again, and then lockdown came round, and at that stage, at the beginning of lockdown, I was still working. Then I was put on furlough for a while, and I was just so thankful that I still had a job.
Yeah.
There were so many people who were losing jobs, particularly in the industry that I was working in. And I was really, really thankful that I worked for a good company who were supporting us. And I had a really good manager who was keeping in contact, and I'd been promised job security. And I was like, I'm grateful for that. There is nothing more that I can ask for right now. And then Pete messaged me.
Okay.
And he sent me a message that said, "You've got managerial experience, haven't you?" And my reply to it was, "Yes." Why?
Because with Pete it could be absolutely anything.
Like you'll know this more than anyone. Like Pete gets an idea and then runs with it.
Yeah, I mean, I only was like joking about doing a podcast, and now here we are. So I was a bit like kind of dubious about the response to that, and he sent me a link to a job that was with a Christian charity working in homelessness prevention, and I'd never heard of the charity before. I looked at the job title and went, yeah, right. Like, there is no way that I can do that. I have no experience in that. There were so many areas that the job covered that I had just never done before. Yeah.
But I had managed people. And it turns out that it had come through like a couple of different people. So Pete had got it from Paul, and Paul had got it from someone that he knew that was also called Paul.
Okay.
Who actually works for Bethany Christian Trust. This was the charity. And they were like, well, why don't you just give him a phone. Give this guy Paul a phone and see what it's about. I was like, okay, fine. So I gave him a call it was a Monday, and I was like, look, this job looks great. I don't think I can do it though. Is there any point in me applying?
Okay. Good way to sell yourself.
Yeah.
Definitely be putting that on the CV.
For someone that worked in recruitment as well, I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah. It's reverse psychology though, yeah?
Yeah, massively. And so I said to him, I was like, look, I don't know if there's any point in me applying. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So told him, and he was like, yeah, go for it. It's like, okay. So the applications had to be in pretty quickly after that. Like it was a pretty quick closing date. So I think I put the application in maybe like 2 days before the closing date.
Okay.
And was like, I'm not too bothered if I don't get it. I have a job. I'm okay. I don't even know if I can do that job.
Yeah.
I'll put it in and see what happens. I then get a call asking if I can come in for an interview in a couple of days. And I was in Norfolk.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, no, I actually can't come in for an interview. Can we please do it over Zoom? And they were so lovely and said, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Had the interview, and that was the longest interview I've ever had. But it was amazing. Like, we prayed in the interview.
Wow. That's fun.
And just speaking to these people, like, the type of questions they were asking was, about Jesus and about where my faith was at and how I feel about helping people and things like this. And then, so not really a lot as to, can you actually do this job?
Yeah, yeah.
And it kind of got around to the question of, okay, so if you were successful, like, what kind of training would you need? And I was like, well, everything. Apart from the managerial bit, like, I know how to manage people, but working with homeless people I've never done, working with people in addiction I've never done, working in community building I've never done. And that was it. They were like, okay, we'll be in touch. So I remember Ash asking me how the interview had went, and I told him that I really, really wanted the job. Like the guys who interviewed me were just amazing. They talked about like some of the work that was being done, and that was incredible. And then, just like the values that they put on the work, and just really letting Jesus lead the work every single day. Yeah. So I was like, I really, really want it, but I don't think I'm going to get it. And they phoned me the next day and offered me the job.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So I started last November, and I love it.
Fantastic.
It is, like, it's absolutely where I'm meant to be. And looking back, I can see that everything that came before it, like when I'd bounced around because stuff hadn't felt right or I wasn't happy, like, it was because I was meant to be here.
Yep. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's God at work.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Really, really good. Okay, so we'll start wrapping it up now. So last week I got Pete to just read one Bible verse that came to mind for him. So do you want to read out one for you? I know you have about 10 listed, but given the time, let's maybe stick to one if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So.
And here's one I prepared there.
Yes. I found it really hard when you asked me what my favourite one was, because I was like, I have lots for different reasons. But the one that I've gone for is Isaiah 53:6, which says, "We all went astray like sheep. We all have turned to our own way, and the Lord has punished him for the iniquity of us all."
And that really sums up what we've just discussed tonight.
Yeah, everything.
So why did you go with that?
That's like my life in 2 sentences.
Yeah.
Like just looking back at how I was and how I was like, okay, I know about Jesus and I know what he's done for me and I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, how can that ever be forgiven? Like, but it is.
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Real true words from the Bible that really speaks to all of us. So thanks for sharing that. If I could ask you just to give a message to people that are listening that are maybe not trusting in Jesus at this point, maybe not Christians, what message would you give them?
I think particularly like for people that are in a similar situation that I was in, like things when you're living a life where things aren't bad, you know, you're reasonably happy and you don't feel like you're a sinner. That's not a word that you would probably use for yourself. And you wouldn't say that you're a bad person or that you might have done bad things. I think like there will always be that feeling that you're wanting something more.
Yeah.
Or that feeling that something is missing and that something isn't quite right. And it's true. There is something missing. And that something is Jesus.
Yeah.
And nothing else will fill that hole.
It's a solid message.
Thanks.
Well done. Okay, why don't I just quickly pray for us just before we say goodbye. So yeah, let's pray. Lord, thank you for bringing Dilly to our wee church. She's an absolute blessing to all of us. And the way we hear her speaking about how much she loves you and dedicates her life to you is so encouraging, Lord. So I do appreciate you bringing Dilly to us. And Lord, I just ask for you to use this podcast to speak to people that are maybe missing you in their life. Whether it's Christians that have lost their faith a little, or whether it's non-Christians. Lord, I just ask you to speak to them. Only you can take someone through the journey that Dilly's went through. It's not us that's doing this. It's not our work. This is all you, Lord. And we're thankful for it every day. So I just ask that you work on these things. You continue to do your work. Yeah. Lord, I bring these things to you today. In your Son's name. Jesus, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks very much. That
Thank
was
you.
a journey, which I really enjoyed. I didn't know a lot of that, so thank you. Yeah. Until next time, troops. Thank you for listening to the My Hope Story podcast. To find out how you can have your own hope story, go to www.myhopestory.co.uk.